Is this better? I only sell these things. I don't have to know how to operate them. Actually, I still do to other industries. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Heyman from Marlborough, New Hampshire, recently retired. And I'd like to welcome you to the business side of calling session this afternoon. We have until 3 o'clock to cover our things. I would like to encourage you to shout out your questions at any point in time. We discussed this during lunchtime today, as a matter of fact, from some other sessions. If you have a question on your mind, just raise your hand. I may not call on you immediately if somebody's in the middle of something, but we will call on you so that you don't have to remember your question for another 30 or 40 minutes. It's sometimes difficult to keep track of things. We like to deal with things when they're current. Allow me to introduce my co-panelist. My good friend Ron Markus has been calling since 1971. This is his 9th CALLERLAB. He's the owner and producer of Desert Gold Recordings, and very good music, by the way. And he is in the Arizona area, is calling for 2 retirement communities out there, and teaches lessons for the club out there from November through April, the snowbird season, if you will. And he's traveling basically in the Arizona-Colorado market. He is still working, he's a retired military person, and is still working full-time as a CPA, and has extensive business experience. And we're very lucky to have him as a panelist on this presentation. As you mostly know, I am Bill Heyman. I am the former owner of a company that services the square dance industry, and as of March 7th, Peggy and I are no longer the owners of that company, but obviously still very involved with the new owners. And I have a banking background. I was a corporate banker from 1965 to 1984, and Peggy and I have been in business together since that point in time. So we've got 35, 40 years or whatever it is now, professional business experience running from accounting to commercial banking to marketing and computers and online software and things of that nature. And I have in fact presented on this subject a fair number of times at callers' colleges, and Ron also has presented many times at his own callers' college on this subject. So we're going to divide this into sort of 2 sections. Thomas is now going to check the sound level, which is fine. Ron is going to be the principal presenter in this. I will jump in occasionally if there's some things that I'd like to cover, and then I would like to perhaps make some other comments on the main subject. And as you can see from my presentation, I would like to talk about a slightly different, yet I believe very related subject that has to do with the business side, and that is if you are a full-time caller, your life after calling, or if you are currently in a job and looking at retirement, some of the things that I think are very important for you to look at. And I won't go through those in detail. It's really much more of a checklist of things that you can look at with your professional advisors, be they CPA, lawyer, and so forth. So here is Ron to start our presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for the kind words about our music. Let me start off by saying that the handout you have, the one that starts off Caller Convention, March 2000, Louisville, Kentucky, and so forth, all of this is give the proper credit where credit is due. All of it came from a couple of different sources. One is several guys put together, John Calton, Paula, Jim Mayo, Bill Peters, and Herb Egender put together a super school, they call it, for teaching caller schools to callers to call. And a lot of that came from that book. The CALLERLAB Caller Training Manual is another source that I use for this. The New Caller Starter Kit is another place where information came from to put this handout together, and my own personal experience. I just want to give some credit where credit is due, because those documents are absolutely invaluable documents. Also on the top of it, it's got my name and my phone number and address and then email and whatnot else. The reason all that's there is so that if any of you decide you have a question you want to call or you want to email, and email is probably a better way to do it, because I can spend a minute writing an email back to you. If you have a question about anything we talk about today, it pops into your head later on, and next month or the month after or whenever it may be. I'd be happy to correspond with you by email. I correspond with a lot of people about different things, square dance related topics, and it would be just send me an email. That's my email address, Carl on Juno, and so just give me pop me an email, and I'd be happy to write back to you. Also, copies of this. Copy of this that will be available and suitable for framing. You can get them in the lobby for $5 a piece as you exit. So if you decide you want one to take home to frame it, because this is such a blockbuster seminar that you've come to. The first words on there, Square Dance calling is a business. Yes, it is a business. Well, so okay, who cares it is a business? Well, a lot of people care. Callers, dancers, the IRS. For most of these being paid, as it says there, as part of the incentive for you to get a little back from the investment you've made in time, effort, money, etc. To get into the calling business. Newer callers shouldn't be expected to come into calling immediately and with the expectation to make a lot of money right away. But that's not the goal necessarily. The goal is entertainment. A lot of reasons. There are a couple of reasons again why callers have to keep in mind that you are a business and act like a business. Have the organization behind you like you are a business, because that's what you are. And the more you look like a business, the more people will such as the taxing authorities and state and government regulation authorities, will look at you like a business and say, okay, this is the real thing. If you receive payment for services, tax authorities certainly are interested in the fact that you're operating a business. And dancers want you to look like you're a business. They want you to look professional. They want you to entertain them. And they want you to grow and thrive and prosper in your business, because if you grow and thrive and prosper, they will do the same. They'll have the opportunity to grow with you, and dancers will identify with that. So you want your business to grow and thrive and prosper as much as possible. You're responsible for a lot of aspects of the company's operation. As a matter of fact, you are the company. In most cases, you and your partner are the company. I don't know of any Square Dance callers that actually employ other people to help them out. There may be some, but I don't know of any. Most of the time, you're a one-man or one-gal show with a partner. You're the sales and marketing department. Of course, that means that you're the product. A lot of people sell products, one thing or another, whatever the product may be. But in this case, you are the product. You're usually the entire sales force. You have to work on selling yourself and selling everything you do, and getting yourself bookings and getting yourself into clubs and maintaining that position with the club. You also have to, as part of the sales and marketing department, you're in charge of setting, doing your own advertising, putting out flyers, making phone calls, being places to advertise yourself, your skills, and that sort of thing. Setting rates and negotiating contracts. That's all part of what you have to do. And I'll talk more about setting rates and as time goes on, in a little further on in the handout. You're the purchasing department. Equipment, records, cars, automobiles, airline tickets, accommodations for you to stay. Equipment and records can be a touchy one. What do I need? Sometimes the tendency is to go off and say, oh, I got to have this, and I got to have that, and I got to have the other, and then you wind up with a whole pile of stuff, and after about a year you look back and you say, why did I buy all that? So got to be prudent about it. What do I need to do what I'm trying to do right now, and what do I need to do that's going to last me for 5 or 10 years down the road that I'll at that point have to maybe upgrade or change. I put the words in there: Priceline, Hotline, frequent flyer programs. I mean, take advantage of these things when you're traveling. Use those opportunities. There's other ones. There's cheaptickets.com and that sort of thing. You can take a little bit of time to look at those things, and so when you are doing the purchasing for your company, you're doing the best job you can, and spending the money as well as if it's going to be spent, it's going to be spent, but you don't have to spend any much more than you absolutely have to. And since the last line in there, in many cases expenditures exceed total income for the first few years. Yes, that's true, and that's true with any business. It's not like when Bob and Sally open a hardware store on Main Street, they may wind up losing money for the first 3, 4, 5 years, but then all of a sudden that starts to turn around. But don't be discouraged if you wind up losing money. You're not the only game in town. You're not the only person that's ever happened to. It'll take a little while. You have a lot of upfront costs that you have to, equipment, records, schools, any number of different things like that. Take a lot of money to start with, but eventually that'll turn around, and at least you can hope to break even. Maybe not necessarily make a lot of money, but at least make it a goal to break even. And of course, there are tax implications on that, as well as the business of expenditures exceeding income. There's tax implications to be concerned about in that area. You're also the research and development department. Keep in mind that what that means is the material you call. Where does it come from? Who do you get it from? Do you make it up yourself? Do you get a note service? What note service is best for you? And how many of you take a note service? Do you have a note service already? Several of you, maybe some of you don't. Okay. One thing you can do with these note services, you can write to them all and say, I'd like to have a sample copy of your note service. I don't know if you know that or not, but most of them will send you 1 or 2 months of their service, and you can look it over and say, well, this is the one I like, this one seems to be the best for me, and then you subscribe to that one, rather than just blindly buying one for a whole year, and then after you get 2 or 3 editions, you say, this really is not helping a whole lot. I should have gotten somebody else's. So shop around for those note services. There's, I don't know, probably half a dozen or so left. There used to be a whole lot more, but there are probably half a dozen or so left. I know Norm Wilcox up in Canada, I think, does one, and I can't think what they all are. But in the Square Dance magazine, the back of the Square Dance magazine, there's information about the note services. You can look there and write to them. Or, most of them have email. You can write to them, or they'll have a website asking for copies. And then back to the business of, I skipped over this one. How do you decide what mic and equipment to use? Again, a lot of people wind up going off, and all of a sudden we've got 3 microphones and 2 amplifiers and 3 different speakers, and you're going to say, why do I have all this? I would suggest that the best thing to do when you're looking for a microphone, try them out first. Go to people who have one and who have microphone A and try it out. You see how it sounds with your voice. Again, you're the product. You're selling yourself. You're selling this product. And your voice is what sells the product. That is the product. Your voice and you are the product. So find one that makes you sound good. If you go to a dance somewhere and somebody's using a microphone and he or she really sounds good on this microphone, well, they will sound good on the microphone, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll sound good on it. It may not be right for your voice range. The other thing is speakers. Find one that you sound good on. And I'm probably going to say the word you 58 times this afternoon, but you are the product, and you are the one that needs to be concerned about how you put yourself across and how you sell yourself and your product. There's lots of different speakers around. There's IRS Tax, there's Keltones, there's Hilton makes 2 or 3 different varieties. A lot of people who have the expertise and talent in this area put their own together. I suggest to you that the best thing you can do is work with one. Go and try some. Try, like for instance, at a CALLERLAB, you can listen to the Supreme speaker, you can listen to the Hilton speakers, you on that speaker, and see which one sounds best for you, and then buy the one that is best for your voice. Some people have, some people like sound better on a Keltone than they do on a Hilton. Some people sound better on a IRS Tax than on a Keltone or a Hilton. So find one, shop around again, shop around and get one that's going to work for you. What research and development again? What caller school should you attend? A lot of people attend a caller school because it's near them. Well, that's certainly an economic issue that you need to deal with. Can I get there? Can I get the vacation time? How much is it going to cost me to when I'm there? This sort of thing. You have to deal with all that. But again, shop around for caller schools. Write to people. What do you emphasize in your caller schools? How do you handle newer callers as opposed to more experienced callers? What happens if you get 15 people who show up and those 7 of those 15 people have been calling for, or 10 of those 15 people have not called at all, and the other 5 have been calling for 20 years? Shop around a little bit because it can make a difference, and sometimes people will go to a caller school because the calling style of the person who is the coach at that caller school, they feel more comfortable with that calling style than the other person's calling style. So shop around for the schools that are available. Most of them are in the summer. Ours is in the summer. We do it on Memorial Day, and then from there on. But there are some that are at other times of the year also. So shop around, see what's available. This, I guess, is 6 or 8 of them altogether. And there's 1 or 2 in New England. We have 1 in Colorado. John and Deborah do 1 or 2 in Texas. There's 1 in California, 1 in Nevada. They're all over the country. So wherever you are, there's probably 1 pretty close to you somewhere that you can find. But again, shop around. Websites for information. There are a couple of different websites. I didn't include them on here, but if you have a pen and paper, I can write them out. I can tell you what they are. These are very extensive websites that have a lot of information in general about square dancing, about calling, material, etc. Vic Cedar's website, I think it's just called cedar.net. Yes, CEDER.net. Excellent website for researching information, material, and so forth. Deborah Parnell has a website, and it's an oddball kind of a name for her website, but let me give you this one first. This is the one you can get to all of them from this one, dosido.com. And that's the one you used to, or still do. Not anymore. Okay. Okay. Anyhow, dosido.com is an extremely extensive, large website with a lot of links to a lot of information. Callers, schools, CALLERLAB itself, just all sorts of links, and a very extensive, very, very good website for research in general. And you can get to Deborah's website from there. Deborah's website, it's Deborah Carroll Jones now. Her website is a very extensive website also for a lot of research. There's Andy Shore has one called move2.com/SD. That's Andy Shore's website. He's got a lot of material there, a lot of research information that you can get there. And I just heard about one last night. There's another fella. I think his name is Rich Reel or Rich Peel, one or the other. Reel? Okay, Rich Reel. He's got a website. It's ALL and the number 8, the numeral 8.com. ALL and the numeral 8.com. So there's a lot of places you can go. Other research and development possibilities. If you flip over to the back of American Square Dance magazine, there's umpteen different books back there that you can buy and look at. And whether you can get them on a trial basis and send them back if you don't like them, I don't know. But again, if you go to Tom's Palomino's booth here at the convention, he's got a lot of books there, and he's got probably a lot of other books that are available that he just didn't bring with him. The other place for research and development, of course, is CALLERLAB itself. CALLERLAB's website, I think it's just callerlab.org. If I'm saying that right, callerlab.org. Go there. There's a tremendous amount of information that's available for newer callers, for callers who've been calling a while. All sorts of downloadable documents and downloadable research information that you can bring right into your own home computer, and you'll have it right there for you. The next subject is maintenance. Of course, maintenance goes along with anything that anytime you have anything that you're dealing with, whether it's you or whether it's a piece of equipment. Maintenance is going to be required. You have to take care of your equipment, your car, spare equipment, your spare amplifier, your spare microphone, whatever it is. Make sure that you keep them working properly. If nothing else, just take them out and use them every now and then, rather than leaving them in the trunk. Oh, I got a spare amplifier in the trunk. Oh, there's no problem. Okay, good. And boom, there goes your regular amplifier. And I say, well, okay, I'll go get the spare. Well, the needle's broken. Uh-oh. Don't have a spare anymore. Get it out and check it out every now and then. I suppose a lot of people ought to do with their tires and their car. They fill up, check the tires, the 4 tires on the car, but how often do you check the 5th one? There is a spare there. It's a little toy thing that sits in the trunk, but check it out. Same with your spare equipment, and it's really easy to do with that. It's not like you have to get under the truck and drop the tire down to work with it. You just use it. Use your spare every now and then. Once a month, just use the spare. Once or twice a month. Take care of your principal product, and that's you. Rest, stay healthy. Do what you can to get the proper rest, stay as healthy as you can. Take vitamins. Make sure you keep up with the doctor, that sort of thing. Take care of your support staff, your partner. Whether it's a gal or a guy, as you have for a partner in your company, your Square Dance calling company, take care of them just as well as you take care of yourself. There's a book I'm reading about. It's The Born Supremacy. It's Thomas Ludlam, I think it is, and he in there, Jason Bourne uses the expression "rest is a weapon," and so it may be not necessarily a weapon for us, but it certainly may consider it a tool. Rest is a tool. You have to rest your voice. You have to rest yourself. If you're falling asleep on your calling, you're not going to come across as well, or your entertainment, the entertainment factor is going to be a little bit less if you're having difficulty keeping up with where you are and that sort of thing in the program. So rest can be a very big help to you. Personnel. You're also the personnel department. And in this area, what I looked at is interaction with club officers. You have to work with club officers unless everything you do is a caller-run situation, which is rare. Many times, home programs will be caller-run programs, but once you get away from home, you're calling at a dance on a Saturday night 200 miles away in your state or the next state over, generally that's not going to be, you're not going to be in a call or run situation there. You're going to be you're dealing with club officers. And I think the most important thing is in dealing with club officers is keep in mind they are dancers, and they want to dance and they want to be entertained. They want to have a good time, and many of the people who are in the dancing community don't want to be involved with the business of dancing. They want to be involved with the fun of the dancing of dancing. You're involved in the business of dancing, and you have a contract. You have personnel, people you have to deal with one-to-one. The club officer, the person who booked the dance, this sort of thing. Keep in mind that they're not all necessarily professionals. You are, but maybe they are, but maybe they're not. So keep in mind that you might be dealing with a non-professional type of person in that area. Your own home club programs, you have to deal pretty closely with your club officers and people in your club. I suppose many of you have run into this with their officers, and then there are the people in charge. Yeah, yeah. I think I hit a nerve. Whoops. But there are people around in any organization, no matter whether it's a square dance organization or a coin club or whatever you may be involved in. There are people who are the people who are the elected officers, and then there are people who are the ones that are not necessarily in charge, but they're the people that everybody goes to for advice or discussion and this sort of thing. So get to know who those people are, because they can be a very helpful resource for you in solving problems. No questions, comments so far? Everybody just listening. I'm just rambling. No, not rambling necessarily, but no comments? Everybody still awake? Turkey for lunch 2 days in a row. That's why you have a critique sheet. I hope everybody's still awake by about 2:15. All right, well, let's go on to management. You're also the management department. You are the management of your business. The advanced planning branch. You're the advanced planning branch of this management department. And the next thing I wrote down was, where is your calling career headed? A company goal or mission statement. What is it that you want to do with your calling career? Does anybody have a mission? I mean, I don't. I'm saying that this is a good thing to do. I do sort of in my head. I've never written it out in longhand and said this is what I want my goal to be, or my mission statement to be. But it couldn't hurt to spend a little while thinking about what you want to do. Do you want to be the most booked caller in Tucson, Arizona? Do you want to be the caller who has the most number of lessons, a number of people coming out of lessons? Do you want to be a caller who calls festivals? Do you want to be a caller who calls in these 10 states and get bookings in these 10 states in your local area? Is that what you want to do? It tends to help sometimes to quantify the mission statement a little bit, like that. You know, the 10 states are in my area the most people coming out, because then you have something, a goal that you can take out of your mission statement. But a mission statement is something like the one I can think of right off the bat is Southwest Airlines. I think the guy's name is Herb Kelleher. He's the chairman of the board of Southwest Airlines. His mission statement, or the way he says he runs his company, is my employees come first and everything is taken care of after that. Well, that's a pretty broad statement. But if you can narrow that down a little bit as to what your mission statement is, I want to be. Our goal is to produce or to provide square dance entertainment to Louisville, Kentucky. Oh, that's a good place to start. Maybe it's a little too broad, but it's at least a place to start. And you think about it for a little while, you could cut it down. I want to provide square and round dance entertainment to Louisville, Kentucky, and teach lessons in Louisville, Kentucky. That's my mission, my goal in my square dance calling business. So kind of just give some thought to it. Goals, by the way, are just that. They're goals, not dreams. If you set a goal for yourself, make it an attainable goal, something you can hit. You know, I want to throw a rock across the Ohio River. Well, that may be, maybe a bit of a stretch. But if you say I want to throw a rock across the street, well, that's a goal. You can work yourself up and eventually get that rock to go across the street. Eventually, it'll go across 2 streets, and maybe eventually it'll go across the river. But if you set small goals, you can work your way up slowly. Right. There you go. Let's see. As far as the advanced planning, again, for yourself, what is it you want to do with your, what programs do you want to call? Do you want to call mainstream, and that's you just not interested whatsoever in any program other than mainstream? And please notice my little campaign that I think a lot of people are on. I hope a lot of people are on. It is a program, not a level. It's a program. Do you want to queue rounds? Do you want to add that to your program, to what you do? That takes some extra time and effort. There's more time and effort required on your part. More equipment, not more equipment, but more records. If you want to queue rounds, that you do want to add that to your goal for yourself. Do you want to teach lessons or not? I think it's essential, absolutely essential, and very, very important that you do teach lessons, because any square dance caller is got to feed his own activity, and feed the activity in general, but certainly feed his or her own activity by bringing new people in. If you don't bring new people in, four little words: no club, no class, no club. And especially in today's environment, the way the square dance activity is having problems with numbers in general. Keep those four little words in mind: no class, no club. It's just they're not self-sustaining. People just don't show up and, unfortunately, and walk in the door off the street and say, "Okay, I'm a square dancer," and they know how to do it right then and there. You've got to feed that activity. So I think it's essential that you, as part of your mission, your goal in your square dance calling career, and your company that you're working with, your company that you have, which is your square dance calling company, you do teach lessons. Do you want your clubs, your home clubs, to be caller run or club run? You want to form clubs and turn the management over to other people, or do you want to run the whole thing yourself, you and your partner, or maybe some? There's a kind of a in between the caller run and club run. Of course, you probably all run into this, where you have the caller run with a group of friends who helps out everywhere. It's a kind of a core group of people who help out, and they're willing to help out. They don't want to be a president, vice president, whatever they want to be, but they want to help out. So and encourage those people. They're going to be the people who support you throughout the life of the club. Festivals. Do you want to call festivals? That's a whole other world to get into. There's a level of expertise that you have to get into the festival environment. But if you develop that level of expertise and you decide that's what you want to do, you want to call 1 or 2 festivals a year, then that's the way you should be going. And in order to do that, of course, you have to go to these festivals. You have to make people know that you're around, that you want to. One of your goals is to get involved in calling festivals. Then that's get out there and do it. It's just like Nike says, just do it. Next item is teach caller schools. This is a part of the management that you have to get involved in as far as planning your career. Do you want to be involved in the teaching of newer callers? I think it's I've been involved in teaching of newer callers for several years now, and it's a very, very rewarding activity to get involved in. It's a lot of work. Especially when you do it like I did. I decided I want to put my own school together. So okay, boom. Let's see, what do we have to do first? We started from there, and we've been at it for a couple of years, and it's a very rewarding thing to do. And even if you don't necessarily put your own school together, if you can work with people in your area who teach newer callers to call, get involved in that. You'll learn a whole lot from these people. These are young skulls full of mush who have no clue about what really should be done or shouldn't be done, and they come up with some stuff. You say, "Whoa, by God, that son of a gun! I'm going to use that." You're writing things down as fast as you can because here's some neat material. So, and it can be very rewarding also to be involved in teaching caller schools. Are you making the right decisions about bookings and training to get you where you want to go, to reach the goals you've set? Be careful about the decisions you make. Sometimes people, especially newer callers, they get started and, "Wow, they called me. I want to become a caller dance. Oh, that's great." Well, is that a dance you want to call? Is it economical to call that? Is this a group that you want to get involved with on a regular basis? Is it too far away? Are they an age group that you might not be comfortable with? For instance, if you're in a retirement community generally, and you get a call from a teen group, well, now you've got a whole different ball game to deal with. than you have in the retirement community. Are you prepared properly to get involved with that particular booking, rather than jumping on, wow, they want me to come and call for them. Oh boy, this is great. And so keep that in mind, and be a little prudent in that kind of decision making. And of course, there's the business of thinking about in management and long range planning. For you, are you doing your share to make sure that square dancing, not just the programs you call or you're involved in, continue to be successful? Because no square dancers. If there's no square dancers, there's no point in having callers, and there's no point in having CALLERLAB. So we've got to make sure that dancers keep going. We've got to make sure that we do what we can, as much as we can. Sometimes it's difficult because of time constraints or economic constraints or what have you, to get involved in giving back, if you will, to the community, but to the square dance community. But it's something that needs to be at least give some thought to that anyhow. As I said there, you have a vested interest in ensuring that the square dance activity continues and stays healthy. Because if there's no square dance activity, there's no point in us being here. So you make sure that you can help out in that area as much as you can. You okay so far? Questions, concerns, comments? You know, this is worked in our area. This is what we do. This is what I've done so far. Toot your horn time. All right. Good. Okay. Now the thing that maybe a lot of you have come to talk about, taxes and record keeping, or to listen to. I'll tell you what. Let me jump down to the pricing first, then I'll get into taxes and record keeping. Pricing is something I talked about earlier, and I brought this up just a minute ago. Don't let your enthusiasm for calling blind you to the real cost you incur. You know, what does it cost me to call a dance? Well, I've got all this equipment, and I've got, you run it out over a couple of years, the cost out over a couple of years, your mileage, the time and effort you put in per hour. But you probably find out you're making $1.25 an hour. It's some very small amount of money, but that's not necessarily why you're into it. But you want to at least charge enough to be fair to yourself and to the club. In a lot of ways, you can look around. You can work on a percentage. You can work on a flat fee. You can work on minimum plus a percentage. $50 plus however many dollars there are for people over 75 that you dance, or whatever the number may be. The net after expenses. The club says, okay, we'll pay you. We'll give you everything that's left after we have expenses. Well, you want to be careful there too, because if all of a sudden they decide that part of their dance is going to be this barbecue, they're going to spend $450 on on meat and poultry and so forth. Well, the net after expense is going to be $11, and you wind up spending a whole afternoon for $11 or something. So a lot of people work on a net after rent, or 80% of the net after the rent is paid, so that at least the club can pay the rent on whatever comes in the door, and then you get 80% of the difference. There's a lot of different pricing schemes that you can look at for calling dances, whether they're the regular club dance, the regular weekly club dance lessons in your own home club, or a dance out of town. A lot of different possibilities, and there's a couple of them there: the percentage, the flat fee, the minimum net after expenses. Find out what the club normally pays. Find that the two things. There's a comma. There should be a period there. Probably what the club normal fee the club pays. That's one possibility. And then whatever the market will bear. If you know that this is a club that normally pays $250, and for the type of event that they're booking you for, or you found that out somehow, don't go in and say I'll do it for $125. You're underpricing yourself, and there's some possibility that they wait a minute, this guy only wants $125. Maybe we should get other people to get $125, or how come he only wants $125? Is he only going to give us half a dance? And maybe half as good as the other people. If you find out that the market, the club or the organization can afford more, and you can perform and deliver up to the expectations they have, then ask for more. Darrell Clendenin told a story some time ago about a one-night stand. A hotel somewhere, resort, I guess it was, somewhere, contacted him and said I wanted him to come and do a party dance for them this one night, a Saturday night. A whole bunch of people, conventioneers coming in. So they asked, "What do you charge?" So he he didn't give him a number right off the bat. He said, "Well, I don't want to over or undercharge you." But he said, "What is your budget?" And well, let's talk about what your budget is for this. And they said $1,200, and he said, "That's my fee." Isn't that astonishing? That's what I'll handle that. Bill, that's what they had budgeted for the entertainment that night for $1,200. So they paid him $1,200 to the one-night party dance. He called about 2.5 hours and went home. So every now and then, a little nugget of gold will fall into your pocket. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Take it and run. But again, remember, be sure that you can perform up to the level of expectation they have for dropping that little nugget of gold in your pocket. Again, going back to what I talked about earlier about goals and where you want to be. As time goes on, if you get involved in party dances and party dances, one-night stands, that sort of thing, well, bottom line, there's a lot of money in calling party dances, one-night stands. Because if you look at what they normally do, they normally go out and look at bands. Anywhere from $400 to $800 to $1,000 maybe or more per night for a band. You can come in, charge them $250, $350, and they're happy as a lark to have you, because along with you, they can get somebody else as a, like what we do in what I run into in Tucson a lot is the cowboy singers. There'll be maybe two or three guys, or a couple of guys and a gal, and they sing cowboy songs, and that's their background. And then when they stop, I start, and then I stop and they start, and they can get the whole shooting match for like $700. They've saved a lot of money. They've provided the entertainment that fits the area that they're in, and everybody at the party is happy about what's going on. So that's kind of what goes on in Tucson. But that's something to think about also. Yeah, the next line I said earlier in your career, you want to at least try to cover expenses. Call for again what the market will bear, what the club normally pays, and at least that'll help you get there and get home. That sort of thing. You want, especially with the price of gas at $2 a gallon, or whatever it is in your area. If you're from California, the $2 a gallon, you saw that a long time ago. You haven't seen $2 a gallon for 4 months. Ours in Tucson just hit right at $2 a gallon in Tucson. So you at least want to cover that. Ask what's normal. That's what Darryl did. He asked what's normal. $1,200. Yep, that's good. I'll work for that. Ask other callers in the area and other callers who have called for this organization what they got. But be careful, because some areas are more dog-eat-dog than other areas. So they may give you a number that's way too high, and you're not going to get the booking because they're trying to keep you out of the area. So there are, believe it or not, there are areas that are like that. I know one right off the bat I can think of, but people in the area don't want other outside callers coming in. And if by chance you get a call from someone in an area, or from a club in that area, and you ask the local callers, and the people who have called for that group before, just be careful what they say, and temper it with, just be careful. That's all I can say in that area there. In a lot of cases, you'll find people who are they'll be pretty honest with you, but especially if they know you're new and you're just trying to get started and on the road, as it were. Let's see. Personnel issues, last but not least, but the last thing I want to talk about is your family, if you have one, and your partner is part of your company. I think I mentioned this before. It's part of the company that you're operating with. Keep your priorities and theirs in balance. You get sometimes, especially people who are new to the activity, new to the square dance calling activity, you just wind up getting so excited about everything, and things, maybe the screen door needs to be fixed, and, well, I got to practice this one record, I'll do that first, and then that's 3 hours later, you're still practicing records, and the screen door still isn't fixed. A matter of prioritizing what you need to do with home, family, and your whole life in general. Okay, taxes and record keeping. First of all, let's see, we ate at what time we finished eating? About 1:30? Okay, everybody stand up, please. Tryptophan break. Tryptophan break. Let's take a 7th inning stretch. Okay, stretch. All right. Now everybody do this. Put your hands out next to you. Okay. Ready? Hooray! Hooray! All right. Here we go. All right, we're all ready to go. We had our 7th inning stretch. Good. 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 There's water in the back. If anybody needs to get a drink of water while you're at it. Did everybody get a handout? There's 2 handouts, by the way. Bill's got one, and the one I'm working from. Get yourself a drink of water or stretch a little bit. And if you haven't got handouts, then go ahead and get one. Oh, you have a question? Okay, let me get the microphone down to you, because the session is being taped, and we want to make sure we get any questions or comments on the tape. Where was the question? Oh, yeah, there we go, right there.
Paul from South Dakota. Because we're taking bookings 2 or 3 years out, what's your recommendation on handling the gas increases? Okay, can you build that into your contract or what?
Yes, you can. Yeah, yes, you can. You can. Yeah, exactly. You can put a fuel surcharge in, especially in the way things are nowadays. I'm sure that nobody have an objection to it, knowing, especially like on the West Coast, that gas prices are up at $2.20, $2.50 a gallon right now. It's very likely they could go to $3 pretty soon. You could write something in your. I mean, it's your contract. This is what I said before. It's your contract, and you're the person in the sales and marketing department that negotiates the contract. So if in that negotiation you say, okay, 2 years from now I'll be there. If the price of gas, and that's a line in your contract, if the price of gasoline is greater than $2.25 a gallon at that time, I will charge an extra blah, 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 whatever number of dollars in order to get there. Yes. What I do in my contracts, I say, oh, I want to have the price, the rate for the dance, which generally is a rate that I've come up with because I kind of analyze what I've spent over the years on square dance calling, or it's a whatever they pay plus transportation plus a place to stay, and I'll be happy to stay with the dancer. That's okay. But if you can't find a dancer who wants to put up with me or put me up, then I want a motel room, and especially if it's a couple hundred miles from home. Yes, another question. The GSA rate. Well, there you go. It's yeah, that's true. Yeah, that can tend to be. You can tend to price yourself out of the market if you're cautious if you do that, because when you're saying the mileage rate, the mileage rate, the current mileage rate that the IRS allows you is 37.5 cents a mile. I think that it went up to 40. Yeah, it's going up to about 40 cents a mile. It used to be last year was 37.5. Now it's going up to about 40 and a half thereabouts. So if you're looking at a booking 200 miles from home, well, do the math. You've got a 400-mile round trip, and you're going to charge you 40 cents a mile. So what is that? 16, $160 in travel. Many times, $160 or $150 to $200 is what the club can pay. Period. Not $150 plus $160 for travel. So you have to temper. That's what I'm saying in the negotiation of the contract. Temper if you'd like to do the booking and you'd like to get involved with that club, if you'd like to get into that area, that's fine. But temper what you were asking them to pay you with what you know they can pay. Otherwise, it'll be, oh, we'll make another phone call. Thank you very much. Click. So yeah, you're right. I mean, you'll certainly use that in your tax returns. But to use that and for larger dances, festivals, weekends somewhere, you can certainly do that because the money is there to pay you in the first place. If it's not there, then it's not there. Yeah. Any other questions before we get back to where we are? Yes. What? Hold it.
I'm Joan Judge from Vermont. And what about if you're doing a volunteer situation, can you declare the gas?
Yeah, you could take the question was, you mean if you're not calling, you're not getting paid, and it's a demonstration or it's wherever it may be that you're not going to get paid, can you take the mileage? The answer is yes. This is part of what you do as part of your business, part of your activity. If nothing else, you're advertising. So you can call it advertising if you want to, but certainly you can take the mileage to get there and back. Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. We'll get started again. Bill, you want to say something? Continue on. Okay. Okay. I'm going to stand back up before my leg falls asleep. Okay. On the area of taxes and record keeping, it is important you keep a pretty good, complete record of what you're doing. And you want to be organized in some way. There's any number of different ways to do it. From the shoebox, which works, it's kind of a cumbersome at the end of the year, because now you've got this shoebox full of stuff that you have to go through and categorize and classify and figure out what you're doing. If you categorize it and classify it as you're going in some other organized fashion, even if you just go to a group of shoeboxes instead of one shoebox, that's an organized classification of what you do. Put, clothing, mileage, any number of different things on the shoeboxes. It probably would be better for something like file folders. One that says costumes, one that says income, one that says all the different categories, repairs, maintenance, any number of different possibilities, whatever categories you need. Put it on the file folder. You have a receipt. You put it in there, and then you've got a classification of all those things that it's just sitting there waiting for you. I think one of the best things you can do to help yourself record income and expense and classify them is to open a checking account. Several years ago, I opened a checking account, and the only thing that goes in that checking account is money I make from call and square dances, and the only thing that comes out of that checking account is expenses I pay that are square dance calling related. Nothing else. My own home personal, and maybe a lot of you use your home personal account for your square dance calling business. But I think you'd be better off. A lot of banks have no fee, no minimum balance. Again, you have to shop around. But I shopped around and looked for a couple of places, and I found a no fee, no minimum balance account. And I opened up that account, and everything that goes in there is square dance related. It's calling related. Everything comes out of there is calling related. The other thing you can do is get a Visa card, Visa, MasterCard, whatever you want to call it, American Express, whichever kind of card you want. But the only thing you use that card for is square dance calling related expenses. And then you've got an automatic receipt for the IRS and for any other government agency that may, or any other agency that maybe come in and want to see what backup you've got an automatic receipt. You've got it in the bill, and you've got the piece of paper that you got when you made the charge. So you can do that. The other thing is you can generate a whole lot of frequent flyer miles by charging on that card, and you can use them to get to and from CALLERLAB conventions. So that it helps, or to bookings or wherever you want to go. Then the next thing down under taxes and record keeping, I said failure to record legitimate expenses. You're throwing money away. You want to be sure that you keep a record of everything you've spent that's legitimate expense, and take it as a deduction on your tax return at the end of the year. It's a legitimate expense. There's nothing that says that it shouldn't be taken. You're not evading taxes. You're avoiding taxes. Avoiding taxes is legal. Evading taxes is what Al Capone spent a lot of time in Alcatraz for. So avoiding taxes, there's nothing wrong with avoiding taxation because that's legal. Evading is not you don't want to hide stuff away. Yes, question?
Michael Dalton Ford from Chicago. What's a legitimate expense? Dancing, for instance, is that you learn something because you're dancing? Is the fee, is the whatever I pay to go dance part of a legitimate expense?
If you as a caller are going out to a dance to dance, you'd have a hard time convincing a taxing authority that you were there for business reasons, unless you convince that taxing authority that you were there advertising. For instance, if you call a guest tip, it's a stretch. It's a kind of a fine line. It's something that it depends on how aggressive or conservative you are with your own personal tax situation. And I should point out that yes, I am a CPA, and yes, I do my own taxes, and I've done taxes for other people. But everything that you hear here, should the light of your own personal tax situation should be shined on that. The light of however aggressive or conservative you want to be on your personal tax return should be shined on anything you do. Yes, I'll give you some general rules and general ideas, but you should be very cautious about being too aggressive about taking some deductions, but the legitimate ones certainly take them. That one, I think you could probably get away with that one, because especially if you called a tip. Now, if you didn't call a tip, you might and especially if there's a lot of expenses involved. It's 200 miles away. You paid $10 a couple to get in. You had to spend an overnight stay there. You take the mileage to and from, and you didn't call a tip. You didn't pick up a book. You didn't buy a book. There was no real research background, research reason, or business reason for you to go there. You might have a little trouble on that one. Yeah.
Does it pass the smell test? Does it pass the smell test, the common sense smell test? Because you know, and I know, what that test means.
That's it. The smell test is the 3 words that the IRS will use all the time. The words are ordinary, necessary, and reasonable. Any expense that you want to take should pass the test, as Bill says, the smell test. Is it an ordinary expense? Is it a reasonable expense? And is it a necessary expense for that business? Anything you do, if it passes, if you can in your mind and in your heart, you can say, yes, this is an ordinary, necessary, and reasonable expense, and you can defend that position and take the expense. If you have any problem with defending those 3 words against any expense that you want to take, don't take the expense.
If you were the IRS examiner, would your response be self-evident and correct? Just put yourself on the other side of the table for a moment, being pragmatic about it. Would it pass that test?
Another question. Okay, just a minute. Oh, this is great. We have a lot of questions. Whoopee! I'm excited. This is great.
Joan from Vermont. What about such as auctions other than baseball bats, where you buying a course, or something that's beneficial to you? However, it is considered a donation. It's not really a purchase.
You mean like last night's auction? Well, at last night's auction, it depended on what you bought. Okay, you paid money you bought a school tuition at that school. All right, there are 2 considerations there. One is, okay. Did you have a question? Okay. The 2 considerations to your that have to be looked at with that particular purchase are you already calling, and is this something that's going to make you better? Could you be continuing education? Could this be construed to be continuing education? Or is this something you've never done before, and this is primary education to get to a certain point? If the first case is true, if it's continuing education, it would be a deductible expense. The amount you paid, not the amount it's worth. The amount you paid is what's deductible. If it's a primary expense, if you've never called a dance before in your life and you'd like to get involved in square dance calling, and you're going to go to this square dance caller school, that's not a deductible expense. Just like a college education is not deductible as a business expense. It's continuing education to maintain a certification or to maintain a certain level of expertise in some career. That is deductible. But to get there in the first place, that comes out of your pocket. Now, again, you have a very thin line. Somebody can say, I am a square dance caller. I called this place, I called this place, and I called it this place, and now I'm going to a school. I therefore am a caller. This is continuing education. Again, is it ordinary, necessary, and reasonable? Does it pass the smell test? If you were an IRS auditor sitting on the other side of the bench, and you told him that your experience was, I've called 3 tips in the last 3 months, and this is now continuing education. What's the answer to the question? Is it ordinary, necessary, and reasonable? Does it pass the smell test? Yes, we got 2 questions right behind you, then we'll get back to you.
Edith Weber, Kansas City area. Do I not understand that the CALLERLAB Foundation is 501c3 and any contribution made to them, whether it be through that auction last night or just a monetary donation check written out to the CALLERLAB Foundation, which isn't that how you paid for that? That would be tax deductible, not on your Schedule C for your caller, but on your Schedule A as a miscellaneous, no, as a contribution.
Well, the idea of the question came up about isn't it a charitable contribution because CALLERLAB Foundation is a 501c3 organization? Yes, but then again there's a but. It's a charitable contribution. I have to make sure I say this right. It's a charitable contribution if you buy something. The charitable contribution is only the portion of the purchase that exceeds the fair market value of the thing you bought. So if you buy a birdhouse for $50, well, I mean, that's what they were. A couple of birdhouses or so. If you buy a birdhouse for $50 that you would normally pay $10 for, $40 is your charitable contribution, and $10 is simply something you spent your money on. Okay, you have to be careful in that area. It's another area where you have to be cautious. Well, I gave it to CALLERLAB, therefore it's tax deductible. Well, it may be. Partially, if you write a check, here, I'm making a donation to the CALLERLAB Foundation, the whole thing is tax deductible. But if you receive a product back, for instance, if you go to a dance and you pay $20 to get into that dance, and $15 of it goes to the American Cancer Association as a donation, $5 is out of your pocket, $15 is your deduction, your charitable contribution. Okay? Did I answer your question? Okay.
Michael Malton-Ford from Chicago. You keep using the word ordinary, reasonable, and necessary. I understand reasonable and necessary. Ordinary as opposed to what?
Okay, what's an ordinary expense is the question. An ordinary expense would be something that anybody else involved in the same activity would also have spent their money on. For instance, now, everybody buys records. But if you go to the IRS with your tax return and there's $10,000 in record expense, purchases on there, and anybody else in the business spends $2,000. Well, is that ordinary? Does it shine? If you shine the light of ordinary on that, would it pass that test? Would it pass the smell test? Bill?
In that case, it would pass the smell test.
Absolutely. Bill and Tom would love that. But anyhow, that's what I mean by ordinary. This is the sort of money that people spend on a regular basis, ordinarily, in that business to accomplish the work of that business. Okay. Let's see. The other thing is, let's see. Here's an item that has come up. People probably heard the term hobby expense or hobby as opposed to business. And you don't want to be a hobby. You want to look like a business, because if you're a business, then you can deduct everything you've spent. That's ordinary, necessary, and reasonable, and passes the smell test. If you're a hobby, you can deduct up to your income. The IRS will have you report all of your income. But if you have deductions that exceed that income, which you very often do, especially in the beginning years of a business, then you can't deduct that if you are considered a hobby. What is a hobby? If you have income, in order to be a business, you have to have income 3 out of 5 years. That's what it boils down to. Take 5 years of tax returns and line them up, and if you've got 3 of those that have income on them from this business and 2 that have a loss, you're automatically considered a business. However, the more you look like a business, the more you look like a continuing entity, the more you can defend the position that the more defendable the position is that I'm losing money every year, but I'm not really in a hobby. So that's something you need to talk about very, very carefully with your personal tax advisors. Hobby as opposed to business. And we got another question back here real quick.
Barry Hendricks, Arlington, Texas. In that case, when you're running the margins that close, I understand it's a good idea to keep account of your time that you spent calling dances, traveling to dances, in order to justify that you are in a business. Yeah.
Absolutely. You want to keep track of the time you spent and where you went, all of that. Not necessarily the time, but that you did spend X number of hours in travel to get there and this sort of thing. Yeah. And the more records you have, record keeping you have in that area, the more defendable your position would be, if that becomes a concern in your personal tax return. Yes.
Bob McNabb, Lowell, Ohio. The question I got: how much of your partner can you tax deduct?
You want to shave a piece of her off or something? Oh, okay. Again, a lot of it depends on what you do. It's a more defendable and more easily defendable position if you're in the round dance business, because then a partner is an essential item. If you're, and I don't know, are you a round dance skiers? Okay. If you're a square dance caller and you have a partner, I would Again, it depends on how conservative or how aggressive you want to be, and you should talk this over with your own personal tax advisor, whoever that may be, whatever CPA you're using at home. You can probably, it probably would be legitimate for the close and so forth if you can also show that that person went with you and was a part of the activity with you. And you could, what I'm saying is, again, ordinary, necessary, and reasonable. Partners ordinarily go with the caller. And if they do ordinarily, then their expenses are considered ordinary, necessary, and reasonable and their expenses are the clothing. Your clothing is deductible because it's called a costume. I deduct them as costumes. That's what they're called. And the only time I ever had an audit was the state of Arizona. Want to know what's all these costumes all about? I told them what they were. I showed them the receipts. They said, "Okay, fine. That's very good. Thank you very much." So, you would have a legitimately deductible situation there if you could show that your partner was part of what you're doing. Yes, you're the caller, but your partner is also there as a support and so forth for the activity. Yeah. Okay. Was there another question? Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm Joan again from Vermont. What about when you're starting out, all right, and you're buying records and equipment, but you're not really being paid at that point? You may be doing volunteer calling or something. Can you use that?
Yeah, that would be okay. I would say I would allow that sort of. I would do a tax return for somebody under those circumstances and say records, equipment, that sort of thing. These are upfront costs you have to get started with. Where I was talking specifically, what I was talking about before was education. Education. You have to be careful with education. Is it continuing education, which is deductible, or is it primary education to get you to the certification in the first place? None of my education to become a CPA was deductible. Everything after that to maintain that certification is deductible. All right, last, just real quick to finish up, there are one other thing I did want to talk about. Some of you may have heard of this thing called the office and the home expense. I would suggest to you that you be very, very cautious about using the office and the home expense. One primary reason is that now a little piece of your house is a business, and you wind up selling a little piece of business property when you sell your house and you move on to another house. So you have to be very cautious, and the record keeping it's a big red light. It's like sending your tax return with a neon bulb attached to it. Oh, office in the home, good, audit pile. It's just such an area where people have abused so much in the past that won't automatically hit the audit pile. I don't mean to suggest that, but you're more likely to hit one if you've got the office in the home expense on your tax return. Again, I want to be sure that you understand. Anything I've said today, please make sure that you take it to whoever your personal tax advisor is, a CPA, whoever you use. If you do it yourself, get the books and publications. The IRS has umpteen jillion publications that you can get, and that are good for research and that sort of thing. You could talk to other square dance callers, your local callers association. You might consider bringing in a CPA to talk to you, say in September, October, about taxes. There's all sorts of tax planning things that can be dealt with in that area. So consider that as a lot of times people bring in showman people, other callers from out of state and whatnot, their callers association. Suggest to your callers association locally they might bring in a CPA to talk about taxes, record keeping, and what the rules and requirements are. And again, especially when you're starting off in your calling career, then you've got a lot of expenses, and if you can defend the fact that you are in a business, those expenses are all deductible. And of course, later on in your calling career, if you find yourself making money, then you have to figure out some way to shelter that money, or just simply pay the taxes on it. So you have one or two choices. So keep that in mind. The 3 out of 5 year, if you're 3 years out of 5 is income thing that we talked about. And take a look at, I said to develop some organized method, take a look at QuickBooks. And how many, did anybody use QuickBooks at all for anything? QuickBooks is an absolute ease. It's like, no matter what it costs. because I bought one a long time ago and I've just been buying updates since then, so I'm not sure what it goes for now. But it's very easy to use, and you can keep track of everything for years and years and years at a time. And what you can do there, once you've got 3 or 4 or 5 years, now you have a comparison of years that can help you in pricing yourself. What does it cost me? I called 300 dances this year, and I spent $umpteen, and I took in $umpteen. So what does it cost me to call a dance? QuickBooks will help you out in that area. Okay. Any other questions? I'm delighted everybody showed up and asked questions. That's wonderful. I'm excited. Here's Bill.
Thank you very much, Ron. Absolutely great. I'd like to go back. How many more minutes do we have here? 20 minutes. Perfect. I'd like to go back. First of all, I must make a comment. Young skulls full of mush just is a whole new concept. I had never heard it expressed that way with young, unfully developed minds, but that was an interesting verbal thing. Those are the kinds of things that I would usually think of. Anyway, just a reminder before I forget, these handouts are also available. If there are others who would like the handouts, you're certainly free to copy them for your local associations, but please also recognize that they should be done in full with the copyright statements that are on them, and they're also available at the CALLERLAB office if anybody needs them. Both digital files are available there. I'd like to go back just to the I'm not going to repeat my whole presentation because it was mostly covered. I just wanted to pick on a couple of things. On my first page, up in the caller functions, and once again, I won't read all of those things, I just mentioned regulatory compliance is also one of your jobs. It's your job to be properly licensed. As we all know, as a member of CALLERLAB, you have your ASCAP BMI license covered. If you put music on your website, you're not covered, just so you know that. And we can talk about that on the side. Another one of my favorite subjects is you are the quality of life controller. You have to find a balance between your calling, your family, vocation, retirement, whatever slice of life you're into. I have certainly, as Peggy would certainly confirm, in my earliest years of calling, I clearly violated the rule. I was in a relatively senior executive position working a long week, and I ended up calling 135 nights a year. And that was really just a bit much. There were a couple of times, more than a couple of times, when I would have to take a $75 taxi ride home from New York City to my house to get to my $21 wage class. So you have to make sure that if you miss the train in New York, you have a real issue. So really be very aware of the balance in your life, and make sure that it's in the context of what you and your partner would like to do with your life and activities and so forth. Just another quick comment on the Callers College listing. Dosado.com is in fact, not because I helped create it, but because it is in fact the largest website on the internet for square dancing. If you go to Google and put in anything with the word square dance in it, you will end up at dosado.com. The beauty of the site is that down the left-hand navigation bar is a direct link, a single-click link, to just about any topic you'd ever want to get. So if you focus, there's a lot of gobbledygook in the middle and all kinds of interesting things and a little bit of commercial banners off to the right to help pay for the site. But the fact is that left-hand navigation bar takes you in one click right to the source that you want. Included in there are Callers College listings. It's the most complete and up-to-date listing on the internet. There are no other pages that have all of those listings, and there are, I think, 12 or 13, because I personally update the page. There are 12 or 13 colleges this year, including Europe and everything else, and some other big workshops. Tom Dillander and Pam Dillander of Palomino Records have agreed to take over the community page of dosado.com. It is a huge amount of work and a huge expense. Big expense, and they've agreed to accept that responsibility as their contribution to the community. So when a year from now or whatever and you're stopping by, do make sure you thank them for that, and make sure that your clubs are aware of all the work that they are doing. In that vein also, if you don't have your own personal website, if you're actively calling and looking for dates, I would strongly recommend that you get your website. Dosado.com does not provide those websites, nor did I, nor will Tom. There are a lot of people in CALLERLAB who would provide things like that, and you also have your local ISPs who provide that, but you really ought to have that done. If you don't know how to do it, go to your local high school, ask the technology teacher if they have a young student who would like to do an internship, slip the kid a $20 or $50 bill when they're all done. They can do it for you in an afternoon, and they'll do it better than probably most adults will do it in a week. So the kids are really clever these days. I had in my employ a young guy who I hired him at the age of 16, and he was a digital music whiz. He stayed with me for 4.5 years, and it was sort of almost scary. And I asked him, how do you know that? You know, on digital music and things, he did 1,000 over MP3s, and he said, I just know it. He's not even sure himself how he acquired the knowledge, but he was building computers. It's like, woo! But he really did. He also had eyesight. He could sit 20 feet across the room at his workstation and say, Mark, can you take a look at this? I have a question on my screen. He would just turn around and say, can you see from there? He said, oh, yeah, I can read it. He could read typewriting on a screen from 20 feet away. Amazing. In any event, the young kids today are really quite computer savvy, and you'll be amazed what your grandchild or one of the kids at your local school would be able to do for you, either for free or for just a real modest amount of money. I know Bob Gaunt mentioned to me yesterday he's gotten a number of paying gigs off of being listed on the dosedo.com website. There are 2 websites that I'm aware of that have extensive listings. The dosedo.com is the largest one. Vic Cedars is running a healthy second. It's a very large listing, very, very good listing on Vic's site. And I'm not aware of any others. I'm sure there's some other local ones, callers associations and all that. Links to all of those other sites are on the Dosedo page, on the state page, in the Callers Association area. So if you're not listed on your local Callers Association website, ought to make certain that you should be there. Keep your email addresses up to date too. Nothing is more frustrating to a visitor than to try and contact you and your email address bounces. On the second page of my presentation, I would like to touch briefly on the category of managing your image. It's one of my favorite topics. Facts do not rule. Perception rules. It's just human behavior. That which will prevail is the perception of how the dancing community and the calling community sees you. And while you may be factually correct, if the way you have presented something is less than professional or argumentative or not constructive in how you presented it, while the content of what you're saying may in fact be a winning strategy, may be the best choice, the best alternative to do, it has the least likely chance of being successful in becoming the vote of the floor. And your dancers, as you know, and I know you can know it, are basically totally unforgiving forever. If you make a mistake that really sours them on you, it's sort of like being a little pregnant. Yeah, it really, either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant, and the reality is that dancers just have long, long memories, which ties into another comment on here further down. It says, never call over your head. I did one night call over my head my first allegedly plus dance. I called what may have gone down as the worst dance in the history of mankind. I was an embarrassment to myself. It was far beneath what I ought to have been doing because I'm very demanding on myself. I thought I was ready, and after about 10 minutes into that dance, it was pain for the next 2.5 hours. I mean, I was just in Death Valley, and I wasn't out west. It was very painful. So I have made the mistake of calling over my head. That hurt me, and I can let you know that that club never hired me for the rest of my years in calling in Jersey. They never hired me. Oh yeah, when their caller got sick and they needed me, I was the guy they came to. I was the go-to guy when he was really quite sick, and I was willing to, quote, step in at the last minute. And the minute that situation changed, I again wasn't on their calling list. So I know from personal experience, you really can hurt yourself if you make a mistake. Remember the perception rule. Perception always wins over facts. Give them their money's worth. The dancers are paying you for a service. Always make sure you give them your money's worth. That includes everything, including the implicit contractual obligation to have a spare needle. If you don't have a spare needle and your needle breaks and you're 20 minutes into your dance and you can't fulfill the contract, you're in violation of your contract. It's a legal obligation to do. You owe them proper preparation, and you owe them a good performance to the best of your personal ability. Each of us has different skills. I certainly was not the best caller in Jersey. Then again, I'd like to think I also wasn't the worst either. So there. Also adhere to the advertised program. I know that's really not, at least in the areas that I've been in Jersey and New England, we actually have had very, very infrequent list violators. I honestly can't remember the last person who was a list violator. 20 years. I can't remember anybody who called off list. Having said that, that's in my 2 areas. I know for a fact in other areas it's a huge problem. The key there is, don't you be part of that problem, because that's part of your business life. That impacts your income. It negatively impacts the perception, and it's going to cost you friends, dancers, and money, and calling dates. I'd like to now switch. Those are really the only additional comments I had on the material Ron called. I'd like to switch very briefly and spend maybe just 5 minutes. Or were there any questions at this point on those comments? I'd like to go to the second page. It's entitled "A Financial Planning Checklist: Life After Calling." I presented this to the Full-Time Callers Committee 107 years ago. It's just a long time back, and I've updated it a couple of times. This is really just a checklist that's not intended to be all-inclusive or anything, but it's just a reminder list of the things about which you ought to be aware. If you're not a full-time caller, it's still applicable. The specific question was, if you're a full-time caller heading towards getting out of calling, what should you be looking at? But actually, the concepts that are here are really universally applicable to all phases of your life. Coming back to something that Ron mentioned before, make sure that you have competent counsel. That should be a CPA. That should be a lawyer when you need it. Always get a real estate broker if you're buying a large piece of real estate or selling a large piece of real estate. Use the professionals, just like they don't have, you're a professional caller. They hire you as a professional caller to call the square dance. They don't hire the guy who put the chairs in the room unless he happens to be a caller, which he might be doing as a moonlight job to make some money. But anyway, in fact, I've seen some good chair movers. The callers are often very good chair movers, as an aside. Very briefly on insurance, one of the things that has upset me over the years is when a caller or a caller's spouse is injured or dies, gets ill, and they turn to everybody else in town asking for money to cover it. And I have to tell you, Peggy and I are very charitable people over the many years. Nobody is going to ever challenge whether or not we've donated a lot of money. But I have to be honest with you, I'm really not pleased when somebody else basically didn't pay their proper insurance premiums for years or a lifetime, and then expects me to dig into my pocket for my hard-earned dollars to make up for their deficiency. If somebody hits hard times, I'll give them all the money I have, but not because they weren't foresightful or responsible in their lifetime to do that. Once again, there are hardship cases, and Peggy and I have happily stepped up to the line for those. But you owe it to yourself and to your spouse, your children, other dependents, could be a parent or a grandparent. You owe them to be properly insured, to ensure that if something happens to you, that person is not sitting there with big bills to pay, a huge mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to go into the details on that. I am not an insurance agent, but I do know that now Chairman Tim Crawford was in the room when I made this original presentation. He was but a young teenager at the time, but already an insurance broker. And when I made the comment, you really, really ought to have a professional insurance broker. Unless you're an insurance expert, you ought to have an insurance broker working on your side to help you figure out what kind of coverage is appropriate for you. Legal, if you look at the news this past week in the Schiavo case, and I'm not getting into politics here, if you don't have a living will and health proxy, you're honestly making a real big mistake, because what you are allowing is everybody else in town, be they political or otherwise, to make a decision as to how your life might have to end. And Peggy and I have had one of these mutual agreements for years with powers of attorney to my brother-in-law, et cetera, and my children. You must be attentive to that in this litigious time. And in this time when a lot of people in our society feel that they know better than you what should happen to you if you're sick or incapacitated. And I'd like to think that everybody in this organization is smart enough to know that they and only they should be making the decisions on how those decisions are made. All it takes is a simple document. They're available on the internet, or if you have a lawyer, they have boilerplate documents. It's not rocket science. It's a very simple agreement. You must have something like that. You also must have a will. Some people say, well, I don't have a lot of assets. Well, some of you may be in the unfortunate position of having a lot of assets, but if you own a home in almost any part of the country, I don't know if you've looked at real estate prices, but it's happened to us. Sometimes you just can't believe how much the property's worth. I know you and I would agree it really isn't worth that, but that's what the next person's going to pay for it, and that's what the prevailing market is. Those values climb steeply. Replacement costs for houses climb steeply. Back to my comment on insurance. Those are very, very important things. If you die without a will, once again, you're at the mercy of the lawyer who's being appointed by the judge, because you probably don't, if you don't have a will, you probably don't have a lawyer either, or somebody to handle your estate. And there's somebody who's going to skim off a whole bunch of money out of whatever the estate is there, and the people who you intended to receive that money may not receive what they ought to have received. So a little bit of advanced planning will go a long way in giving your relatives, be they senior or junior to you, a lot of peace of mind. And most of all, it will give you peace of mind to know that you've really been planful and honestly done the right thing. Make sure that you also have a power of attorney given to somebody you trust, general power of attorney to somebody you trust. It can be a dangerous tool, so do it only with clear legal advice and all that. It could also be a limited power of attorney. That doesn't mean you have to turn over everything to that attorney. That attorney does not have to be a lawyer. That could be a relative, cousin, friend lawyer who's not your lawyer, etc. Insurance planning, once again, beneficiary designations and all that, all part of the whole package. Smoking, one of my favorite subjects. I am a former heavy smoker. I have reformed in 1960, whatever it was. I did finally give up smoking after too many years of smoking. As I've said to some very good friends who are callers, national callers, if you smoke, I'm not even going to argue the medical issue because everybody here knows about that. Look at it purely from a financial perspective. If your voice is your performing tool, you might as well just take a hacksaw and rub it up and down your windpipe, because you're really doing the same thing, and it's just a foolish financial decision. I understand the addictive nature. I was there. I'm not preaching on this. I'm talking from a business perspective. Think of it from that perspective. I'll leave the health side for the doctors. Funeral arrangements. Decide how, where, what, how you want to be disposed of and at the point that you pass away. That's your decision. If you don't have a will, or if you haven't done the planning, there's always Potter's Field down, next to the railroad bridge. I'm being a little facetious to make the point, but you really ought to plan for it now. If you're in the process of changing, and this is really my last comment, if you're in the process of changing careers, at the time this was originally written, it was for full-time callers moving into a life after calling. Do a personal skills inventory. Take a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, draw a line down the middle, and put love in the left-hand column and hate in the right-hand column. And write down the skills that you're really good at and the skills that you just hate and that you don't really do well at. Write down in another piece of paper the things that you love to do, not necessarily skill-based, but activity-based. Things you love to do, things you hate to do, and then go through the love columns and figure out, what do they add up to? What could you do? Would you be a good real estate agent, or you want to go back to farming your daddy's farm, if you will? If that was something in the family and you are capable of doing that. But look at your likes and your dislikes. Look at your hobby. What can you do in business? This business that I was in with Peggy started because I needed a wireless microphone. And I said to Peggy, if we bought 3, I could sell 2, and now we sell, even after the Hanher sale, we sell $500,000 worth of microphones a year. So we are in primarily the wireless microphone business for the fitness and dance industry, not for square dancing now. But we turned the classic hobby into a small business, which turned into a somewhat larger business. Those are really my final comments. They are much more on the philosophical side. They're not all of them happy. I didn't mean to end this on a downer, but these are terribly important issues, and I'm just trying to make you aware of that. Be aware of these terribly important things. Are there any questions from anybody? In the back, sir. We only have a couple of minutes.
Bruce from Illinois. Either of you gentlemen, do you see any advantages to forming a corporation or an LLC?
Ron says no. The microphone's there, but I'm going to run up so you can talk.
No, not really. Generally, you form a corporation or LLC to protect assets from outside incursion, from people getting it, suing you and winding up with your house. Properly insured, insurance through CALLERLAB, the liability and so forth. In most cases, that'll take care of you. If you're deeply concerned about somebody suing you, and while you're calling a dance, and that person winning a $5 million settlement, and your insurance not being able to handle it, then you could do it. However, then go ahead and incorporate. However, keep in mind that the IRS has a term that's called a thin corporation. Is this really a corporation? And I think in our case, with a one-man or one-gal show, 2 stockholders, 2 people who call square dances, I'm not sure you'd have a terribly defensible position again that you were really a corporation. And the money you had to spend, because now you have another tax return, and you have another group of state requirements for filing that you'd have to do if you were a corporation. Thin corporations or sham corporations can be pierced. And in the eyes of the insurance world, the legal world, and so forth, they are therefore corporations that don't exist, never existed in the first place, and bang, they've got your house anyhow. But again, that's only if you're concerned about being insured and losing the car, the house, the farm, etc., etc. It's again your personal, the way you feel personally, your personal tax advisor, your personal attorney, your personal insurance people are all people you should be dealing with. For your own personal situation, to get that kind of question answered. Should I form a corporation? What are the advantages, disadvantages to you personally, not to everybody else in this room? Yeah. Okay. Did you want to do?
I think we have to wrap up. You had a. Oh yes, thank you very much. Critique sheets. You have a critique sheet for the whole convention. Please do critique this session if you feel that this session should be repeated, expanded, or redirected, and the same comment is true for all of the other sessions during CALLERLAB. The board really does read these things. So they really do read them carefully. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have other questions, we'd be happy to meet you during the break. Thanks, guys.